I'm Sir Flowbojan Thunderhammer.
And I'm Teflon Frosthammer.
And I'm Cabbage Tidehammer.
And this is
WAK.
If Amtgard knighthood means anything, you can't knife a motherfucker and keep it.
And the thing that people need to understand essentially about arts and sciences events is that your scores don't matter.
You want a black phoenix or a white phoenix?
Jeez, language, man. We're
Yeah,
on
right.
a freaking podcast, for fuck's sake.
Mind-blowing experience, right?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to WAK, where we discuss topics important to the Amtgard community at large and talk with interesting people from around the foam fighting world. This week, we are doing a throwback episode. Quite some time ago, we had Wunjo on from the V9 committee, and we have not only got Wunjo this time, but we have also got Gorovan, another member of the V9 committee, who has come on to do kind of a follow-up episode on some of the exciting things that happened over 2021 involving V9. Thank you both so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us back. I'm happy to be back with WAK.
Yeah.
Well, I'm here with WAK for the first time.
Yeah. Welcome back for the very first time. So we were actually talking just a little bit before we started the podcast, and you were telling us some changes for V9. So like, obviously we know Druid right out, armor being removed, shields removed. Bard is getting a buff. What else is sort of the big news? And if people can't tell, I am absolutely full of it. What are the big things you've noticed in some of your, I know you recently posted a video and there's more surveys going on, but like, what's the biggest news so far?
So we're gonna try to toss these questions back and forth between myself and Gorovan so we get people talk time. So the phase 2 is what we're in right now. We put out a big, well-produced 50-minute presentation at the IKCOM meeting. If you haven't seen that, go to amtgard.com/v9. It's up there in our reports.
We were watching that just before this kicked off.
Yep.
Yeah. We put a lot of effort into trying to make it entertaining. So hopefully it was.
The G.I. Joe thing. Yep. Very good.
It was a very good meme.
So yeah, phase 2 is what it says, what we said there. And we're doing 3 things, most importantly. Number 1, we are doing our class surveys. This is what people have been really wanting to see, right? They want to tell us how their class needs to be buffed and every other class sucks and is too powerful and needs to be nerfed into the ground.
Bingo.
We are doing the onboarding for our essentially closed beta. We've been calling it the Field Research Program, but that is essentially bringing on parks who would like to test random stuff for us. So we have about 40 some parks already enrolled.
Holy
and
cow.
It's open constantly. So you can just apply. Again, amtgard.com/v9, and you can find the form. You just apply. You can have up to 3 people be your park representatives. I think we call them research ambassadors. And you need your entire park to be okay with it. So like officers need to sign a form. You need to give us, I think, 3 separate times. You need to say like, yes, I've talked to my park. Yes, they all want to do this. And then you just get in the program and you get invited to our Discord server. And in January, we're going to start putting out stuff for people to test. We're starting with experiments, not play tests. Experiments, because they're not necessarily things we're trying to put into V9, but right, we're like, we want to do this and see what happens, right? See how people use it in V8, so to speak.
This is your differentiation between a beta and an alpha. Like the alpha is like, you're probably never going to see any of this in the final product, but we're just seeing what sticks.
Yeah, we've been calling this phase the alpha phase, or pocket playtesting is what this is, and then after next summer, we're going to launch our actual alpha to the closed groups.
Nice.
Right. So it'll be like a closed alpha. And then a year after that will be the open beta where everyone's just like, here.
So
one thing we've been talking about is that this is going to be do a lot of like limit testing. So like see how far you can push things before stuff breaks.
Yeah.
If we're most of the things we'll be putting out are going to be tested within V8. So play V8, but try this, see what breaks, see what works, see what doesn't, and we'll take all that feedback and use that as we write the alpha.
Yeah. So like as an example, like archers can use a gun. And
yeah,
we'll see how that goes.
That's how you read my mind. That's actually what the first test is.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Does happiness is a warm gun just play in the background the whole time?
No, for copyright reasons, we can't.
Right.
Oh, okay. Hey, so I had one thing that I wanted to do, and I meant to start out with this, but I have really bad ADHD. So if you haven't watched the first episode that we put out with Wunjo, you should go back and watch it, especially if the rules of Amtgard and the way that they are going to be changing is important to you. The second thing that I wanted to mention as we were getting started here, phase one, we've been talking about phase two here, but phase one was all about a set of surveys that were put out. If I remember correctly, about 13% of the people responded to it, which is above the average being about 10% or so. So this was above that, good there. If you didn't take those surveys, shame on you. Wunjo may not say that, but I will. If you did take those surveys, good. Get your friends to take them as well. If you care about the direction that the game is going, this is your chance to speak. You will not get another large-scale chance like this until the new rulebook comes out. So please go and take all of these. But good response, hoping for a better one. Now we move into phase two, and we're talking about what the V9 crew that we have today was discussing now, park play testing and things like that. So picking back up where we were, I'm just going to very quickly recap what phase one was there.
I'll raise the stakes,
Yeah.
man. If we don't get to 20%, warriors can't use swords.
So
All right.
I can actually segue off of what you just said as far as phase two goes. I just did a mass spamming of posts to like every kingdom yesterday with the current engagement chart for the class surveys. And we didn't do it by kingdom, we did it by class this time. And we also had a like a gender breakdown to see
Oh, nice.
what different groups are filling out which surveys. And the big thing that we've noticed is right now we need more women to do these surveys. And I know a lot of the time women and non-men get grouped together when we're talking about these things, but specifically non-men responses are outnumbering women responses. And I'm pretty sure we all know that there are more women playing the game than other gendered individuals right now, just as a rule of thumb. So that means there's a lot of women that haven't done this that we need to get out there. So if you are listening to this and you know some women Amtgarders, please go do them. If you're a man, if you're a non-man, if you're another gender, whatever, please also do the surveys. But we definitely want to see the numbers for the women get up there so we make sure we can act accordingly.
If you're a lady and you've done the survey, screen cap it and send it to me and I'll give you a piece of candy.
God.
Do not take candy from her.
Yeah,
It's a bad news.
just an onion.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to float this question to both of you because you said something that to me is really interesting and probably ultimately means nothing. But you said you were sorting them by class response. Which class has had the highest level of response to these surveys, regardless of gender, I guess, and which class has had the lowest level of response?
Aha.
Stand by. Gotta pull up.
It's definitely Druid. We're just trying to protect our class.
Place your bets. Place your bets while I pull it up.
I don't want it to be barred.
Well,
on the
so while
bias.
Wunjo pulls that up, one thing we've been doing is we've been
Yes.
trying to like prod the community at large to keep V9 on their minds. And so what we've been doing is looking at the response rates across the different classes and trying to be like, okay, this one's a little underrepresented in our responses. Let's go be like, hey guys, we need everyone to go do healer, go do wizard, go do whatever.
Yeah, I
keep doing
remember.
that
I think
until we get
Bard
enough
was one of the
responses.
ones that you guys were lacking at one point. And that was when I was making my transition out of a V9 or rules rep / V9 rules rep thing because I gotten king and I was like, I'm not going to be able to do everything.
He said, "I'm a
There.
My guess, healer.
for most or least."
For most.
Okay.
So here's the question. Do you want to know most responses numerically or most responses by percentage of people that play that class? So we asked how many, like, what class do you consider your main last time, right? And so we used those numbers to estimate the actual population of each class in the game. And so we used those to calculate our targets for each class. So they're not all aiming for the same.
I'm really bad at math.
Which one would make me look better?
I want to
Okay.
know which one people had like the most opinions about. So I guess just like most raw response.
Yeah, that's kind
All
of what I
of
was
them.
thinking.
Most raw
God.
responses, as I drop my phone, most raw responses right now is Barbarian. Barbarian
Oh,
is the closest to they're about 50% of the way of what we need them to be at. So no class is even close to the target right now, which is fine. We're getting to the point where we see the general trends of information, but our margin of error is still big enough that it could be way off, right? If we had the just wrong skew of people. The weakest, looking at this, looks like Druid.
Wow.
So it's not the least amount of responses. The least amount of total responses is Peasant with only 19.
No, it's 9 o'clock.
It's Subway 18 times and one other dude.
Well, so we actually originally didn't have that in the lineup until people were like, wait, we didn't get a survey on this.
No.
We got Reeve, we got Monster.
I can be Master Peasant. I can be a Paragon Peasant. That proves it.
Well, is Peasant getting a rework looked at?
So, disclaimer, anything I say here
right, yeah,
is subject to change. I think just like the color class, the peasant class has been adopted by people, whether we want it or not. You gave it a name. People are like, I want this name to be important. There's no taking it back. Pandora's box is open. It's there.
It has. Absolutely has.
So I personally think the obvious route to go with this is just make it an official, like, it's a challenge class. What does it get? Nothing.
Yeah.
That's the point of it, right? And you just make it so it's like, looked apart, you can be enchanted. That's it. So if you're getting punished and forced to play peasant, you don't have garb, you can't be enchanted. If you want to put on a little bit of garb, then you get your looked apart, you can be enchanted. I think that's a very simple way that keeps the peasant mains happy, because most people who go ham into peasant, they'll still have like a tunic or something, right? And it still leaves it there to technically be a punish class if you want it to be, right? Because we can't really make anything less than you get no weapons, just run around and get hit.
Yeah,
right.
So what you're saying is peasants before only had like little daggers and swords, and now they have torches that they can carry around in their little...
Yes, real torches, actual fire.
Oh, perfect.
I'm in.
Yeah. We'll play test that along with the barred gun thing.
Yeah.
See how that works.
Totally changes my mind to peasant.
How'd the playtest go? It went bad.
Yeah, many crimes were committed.
Yeah, they were all asking for pitchforks instead of torches.
Yeah.
Well, you see, if you bring in the optional multi-classing rules from the
There it
third-party
is.
supplement, you can multi-class Bard with the gun and Peasant with the torch and get a flamethrower.
Now you're
gosh,
speaking my
he's got it.
language.
He has got it.
I too played 3.5.
And then you play Warlock and you get double fuel. That's how that
Yeah,
works.
double fuel. So one of the things we learned, we did a series very recently on like other games and how they sort of, play and how they work and everything else. And one of the things that stuck out to me was, I say this every time, I believe it was Darkon. If it's not Darkon, don't come after me. Darkon has classes specifically for non-com players that are still like it's more than color but less than peasant, if that makes sense. And I think they called it artificer, where like they supplied special items, or like it was basically your candy druid.
In a way, yeah. I think that was
more or less
how it
where they
was
could do stuff. I know that we probably won't do something like that, but like is color being looked at as well?
I can speak to that unless Gorovan wants to.
You go first.
It's a really obtuse
Anything else
question.
you want to add on to that?
So again, disclaimer: anything I say is subject to change
Yeah.
because I'm throwing out big ideas here.
Mhm.
So there are many angles to approach stuff. So just to give you guys some insight onto how me and Gorovan might not necessarily line up in what we're saying. Right now, over the Christmas break, we are each member of the V9 team is essentially independently doing their own little like. What from all the data we've got, what do you think V9 is? And then we're gonna all come together, see where we line up, right? And then kind of work from there. Just because we don't want to stifle unique ideas, because like I'm very loud. I'm trying to naturally lead us in a certain, progress. And sometimes that can make it hard for other people to feel like they can speak up. So hopefully this lets people sculpt their own ideas.
Right. You sort of build the Venn diagram and then work towards the center.
Yeah. So for me with color, I think a lot of people get non-com and person in a battle game who can't be hit mixed up. Right? In my mind, non-combat means not in the combat, like not even on the battlefield, something else. And then you've got a immune person or a special accommodation type system, for people on the battlefield. So my idea for how to make color better than it is to explode it into essentially everything else you could do in Amtgard to really point out, like, hey, this isn't just a game of battle games. There's all these other things you can do. And someone was talking to me and they were telling me, hey, so a new player came out. They came out with their boyfriend, and their boyfriend wanted to play the battle games. And they were like, oh, what else can I do? And they opened the book and they're like, here are the classes. But they realized, like, they didn't want to fight, but there is all this other stuff you can do, but it doesn't really have an identity to it.
Right.
Like there's the award track, and if you go really ham, you could be like, I am a serpent path or an owl path, but there wasn't like that class type draw to it. So my idea was to make a character level class for literally everything, right? Even the stuff that is already getting awards, but this is the how you are in portraying it as a person, not the actual results of what you're doing, right? So for example, aristocrat could be the, what are you doing? You're the officer, right? This is your officer class, right? So if you just, right, you have an entertainer class that is the minstrels and the, like, actual musical bards, people playing music, people singing, some name that is good for the cooks and the chefs and the water bearers and all the people keeping us sustained. And there's a lot of those. You can go through and make all of those, and not only would it give all those people something to grab onto, but it makes them feel like they're part of the whole better than what we have right now. And hopefully it might generate some intrinsic value of, just like how a warrior will, go out and just, I don't know, overly fan over some metal crafting stuff, not because they're going to get awards about it, but just because they're like, I'm a warrior and this is my identity. Warrior, armor, right?
We have one of those in our kingdom. Hi, Heralder.
He's trying to break out of that.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Fool.
So that's my thought on color. And a lot of the other color players, especially a bunch of like Paragon colors that I've talked to, have suggested similar ideas, because no one seems to be able to agree on what color is.
Yeah.
Right. And if we are going to have sorry, I see you putting the mic, I'm going to say something and I interrupt you. I apologize.
Oh, you're fine.
Go ahead.
No, you can keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, you're the guest.
There's also a slight delay on your end on the video, so sometimes it's hard to catch the visual cue.
Oh, I apologize.
That's
Yeah,
not
no.
you. That's on the
That's
potato that we're
probably us,
currently
yeah.
running this on.
I'm also on a potato, so we've got like potato on potato action.
Eventually we'll make a clock. It's okay.
No, Wunjo, could we make some poutine out of this?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Do you have gravy and cheese curds?
I have the gravy.
I have the
I have the gravy.
Man, I have the gravy.
But yeah, so that's my idea in a nutshell. And if we wanted to have a class, a color class that was that on the battlefield but not fighting, like, arrow retrieval person, if you want, you could have that. Reeve could be, or like official or some sort of that category could be in this branch.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I really like that, Wunjo. And did I successfully interrupt you? I'm sorry. I was at a park once, Wunjo. A very short comment, and then Vidalia, who's been waiting to talk.
Might get to talk.
I saw a park that did something very similar to what you're talking about, where they were trying to get some of the younger kids engaged that couldn't actually fight and things like that, so they could level up arrows, or arrow retrieval or weapon retrieval or something like that. And then ever so often, like for every X number of arrows that they retrieved, they got a special arrow. And the archer, before he fired it, had to hold it up and say, I have been given a special arrow, and could fire it. And it did like 1 point extra damage or something like that. But it was the kid who was probably like 10 or 11 that was retrieving them that got this ability. So you don't even have to give any kind of abilities. I think that you really are doing a value add there with that. I'm full support of anything in that direction. Sorry,
Yeah.
Vitalia.
You're fine.
No. Go. Your turn.
I was just thinking that a lot of these class structures, if you ever played Ragnarok, where you'd have like the little artisan or the merchant or other things like that would offer like supply chain. Yeah. Okay. Well, Fuller knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That was all.
So to actually speak to that, and I want to let Gorovan say his thing, but one of the things we've discovered recently, or that I've been noodling around in my head at least, is I want to make sure that we don't over engineer Amtgard to the point where it's too hard for our other game runners to actually run with it.
Right.
And if we successfully execute something like what I just suggested, you could have levels for those, and then players can then build their own systems, being like, oh, hey, if you're a level 6 entertainer for this quest, you can do this. And it's completely
legend.
Yeah. Yes,
You
please.
He agreed.
And you could have there'd have to be something that would be like a miner or a forger. Like you could have crafting. Honestly, you could have color crafting classes, right? Like metalsmith, leather worker, whatever, that are just there. And then like a metalsmith can maybe mine sometimes, right?
Well, we had Artificer specifically interested me from the the Darkon.
It was
area.
Darkon, yeah.
It interested me because that like Artificer was what they used to solve a lot of their game balance problems. So like I didn't bring the right thing to beat this guy. Well, we've got an Artificer and he can make a flame blade or whatever. And then like that's your solution to not bringing the item to defeat Frost Giant or whatever. Is like Artificers was sort of their filler that let them kind of work around what might be like gaps in their gameplay otherwise. But like that's a whole new class that has tons of ramifications. Like I didn't know that we'd ever do something like that, but I also think clever game designers can just go, hey, you've got a flame blade, go nuts, and then sort of solve it that way as well.
So I want to ask you something, not Wunjo.
Gorovan.
Gorovan, whose name I did not forget.
It's on the notes.
And couldn't see the notes. Gorovan, you've been doing these class surveys, and of course they're still going on, as you mentioned, up to this point. Have you run into anything that was really surprising to you as you've been reading over some of this?
So not necessarily, this isn't specific to the class surveys. This is actually just something I've been finding with all of the surveys we've been doing. It's just the variety of how many different ways people engage with Amtgard. So a little bit of backstory. So I started playing in New York City, in Manhattan, in Central Park, which is the weirdest experience of Amtgard I've ever seen.
And then Hawkeye showed up, and I saw
Right.
that episode, right? You were there.
Yeah, I was personally there. I met Hawkeye.
Is that where
but
you still
then-
play, or are you in a different location now?
No, I'm currently in upstate New York.
Our
Western
friend
New York.
Beefy, a friend of ours, Beefy, was there playing in Central Park. I guess it's like over a year ago now.
2009. It was before the pandemic and everything. So 2019.
Yeah, so he that was the first time we'd heard of a Amtgard Park being in Central Park in New York. I was like, that sounds bizarre.
So this actually kind of ties into my response about color, which was that we had so many walk-ons. Like just there's tourists constantly. And so people just be constantly walking on. And so I really got a lot of experience trying to just like onboard people into Amtgard in like 2 minutes so they could play a battle game and then they would keep being a tourist. And so one of the big things was people who wanted to know more about the society of Amtgard versus just the battle games. There's not much support in the rulebook for the culture. And one of the big themes that we saw in and highlighted in the GOTC presentation was that there's a lot of things that we do in Amtgard that aren't supported by structures in the rulebook.
Yeah.
Things like questing, things like magic items that are that
that
people do on their own. They bring their own systems to it, but it's not cohesive because it's not standardized. And even a framework that you can then build something within would be more helpful for people that don't have that spark to build their own systems. And so for color, my thinking, kind of like what Wunjo was talking about, is just have more of a description in the rulebook of what else we do, besides we're the LARP sport thing.
Right.
And then going back to your question about what surprised me about the surveys is people have different terms, they have different like attitudes towards wider Amtgard, the role of officers, the role of the rules, the role of Reeves. Like what a quest is wildly different depending on where you're playing Amtgard. And all of those different changes not only made it very interesting to see in the responses, but also made it we had to be very conscientious about it when we were writing the surveys to not bake our own biases on what a term means into the survey. Because if we ask how often does your park do a quest, one person might say, oh, we don't do quests. Relic quests are only for kingdom events, but we're not maybe necessarily ask about relic quests. We're just talking about role-playing activities. And that's why you'll see some of those weird, not necessarily the most natural phrasings in the surveys, because we're trying to be as agnostic as possible so that we try and reach everyone's definition of a certain element of Amtgard.
God, I hadn't even thought about that from like a data collection standpoint. You do have to be very careful about how you ask your questions.
Yeah.
Else you get bad data.
It's crazy.
We actually,
Go ahead. I was going to say it's crazy because there's whole like college courses that you take on this where they'll give you examples of like a video and say, how much do you think this car was speeding? And the car was actually going the speed limit, but the way they asked the question made someone give a different reply.
Yeah.
And I hadn't considered that either.
We had an incredibly difficult time writing survey number 4, which was about, now it's called combat activities, but just using the term either battle game or scenario is like completely different, because the official definition of a battle game in the rulebook is everything from ditching to relic quests.
Right.
Those are battle games. It's literally everything we do, right? But most people, if you say we're gonna go play a battle game, they're thinking full class.
Yeah.
Is that true where you are?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Right. So we're like, okay, we can't use the term battle game as it's in the rulebook because no one's gonna understand that. So let's use the term scenario, because we're trying to describe, like, we're trying to say like, hey, what is your favorite, like, how would you describe the group of games that is like Capture the Flag, King of the Hill? What would you call that? It's like, what's your favorite game type?
Militia.
Objective-based game, I guess.
Yeah, because game type is also in the rule book, and game type is ditch, full class, some class, whatever, militia.
Full class, no magic.
Full class, no magic. Yeah.
Which is a long way to say militia. I don't know why we're doing that.
No, that means warrior gets ancestral armor and all their stuff, but wizard doesn't exist.
It's just the forecasters don't exist.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of like Amtgard culture, right? Like you talk about, what is Amtgard culture, and it varies from place to place. Like in Britain, it's like a boot, and then everywhere else it's a trunk, and like, in Germany, it's in here it's a car crash, and then in Germany it's like an Automobilen Whoopsie Daisy. And like you have to sort of keep that in mind when you're going back and forth. I really just wanted to make that joke.
Yeah, it was a long setup, and they
was.
gave you an appropriate amount of pity laughter for it.
Like a weight's off my shoulders.
But yeah, no, it's really interesting in that regard. Like what Gorovan was saying about how quests are viewed differently. Our feedback about quests was really eye-opening, because to some people, a quest in Amtgard is someone playing a Minotaur in a battle game, or their only idea of role play in Amtgard, and all their feedback based on that is like role play as like going to a zoo. So there are NPCs that will come out and role play, and then you will just fight normal stick jock, no role play at all. You'd be like, oh, look at the cool Minotaur. Look how he's grunting and yelling and acting like a Minotaur. Isn't that cool? Role play. And apparently there's some parks where that is the extent of the role play they see. And you say a quest, they think that. And then you talk to like anyone in like Northeast area and you say quest, and they're imagining getting lost in the woods for, 5 hours.
I mean, on paper, that second one sounds a lot better, but the first one is definitely what we're doing down here.
Yeah. What am I looking at? A Minotaur. Cool.
I'm gonna stab it.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
That was it. That's it. That's the extent of the role play.
All right.
not
So
role playing.
So last time I was on, at the end of the thing, you guys asked me to tell a funny story, and I didn't have one, and you just reminded me of the story I should have told. So I'm telling it now. It's very short. Basically, we have, like I said, a big quest culture up here, but we have stick jocks as well. And there was one quest I went on where one of our stick jocks was playing an NPC, and he had like a tiger onesie on. He was playing a tiger. And yeah, so he was like, kind of like moving around on the ground, being all tigery, and we're like, oh, cool, look, he's role playing, like he's getting into it, right? Because a stick jock, a good stick jock, right? Learn to flirt. And then as soon as we get near to him, we're like, what do we see? He's like a tiger. He just gets up and like immediate like tournament fighting flow pose, and we're just like, okay. Thanks. You almost had it.
You were this close. You just missed it by that much.
I really wanted this to end with like this stick jock's role playing so well, and then when he got over there, he found out that a contact dropped out or something.
Just look at hell.
Wow, he's really getting into it. No, I just can't.
I can't see. I need help.
Jinx.
Yes.
Wrong tiger. So I saw in the notes, and I can't see them now because they're more than 3 feet away, something about accessibility, and that being a consideration in V9. And I like, for my work, I do a lot of accessibility testing and everything else, but how do you bring accessibility into a game that's very physical like Amtgard?
Yep. Anyone?
We're looking.
I know it has to work with screen readers.
Hey, V9 team, could you just solve all of Amtgard's problems for us?
Yeah.
You've got all the answers, I'm sure.
Gorovan, do you want to field this?
Yeah. So something you mentioned was like screen readers. So there's the accessibility of the game, like how do you get into the game? And there's the accessibility of battle gaming, and there's a lot of considerations that are different for both. So there's things like we're talking about an audio companion to the rule book so that people who are visually impaired can still access the rules, all the way to things like how heavy can armor be and people still reasonably wear it, to how expensive can equipment be and have people still have reasonable access to it, because there's all these different accessibility levels, from financial, physical, mental, whatever it is.
Right.
There's so many different balances that we need to fine tune and try and get as many people playing as much Amtgard as possible.
To play off of that, and I'm sure if you just saw the video, some of this should be fresh, and hopefully it was as shocking to you as it was to us. But some of the numbers, like 40% of players are getting overwhelmed with the amount of noise on the field. Like that is a stupid amount. That's not like, oh, people with hearing problem. No, that's just everyone is having a problem. There is way too much noise in a game and they can't follow it.
I remember going to my first big battle game as maybe 18. I guess I was 18 years old at the time. And I had fought at the park once before going to this huge event in the Rising Winds. And I walked out into the middle of it as a warrior. I'd made myself some cloth armor with studs, which at that time, as long as you backed it, was worth 2 points. And I had no idea what was going on. There was just people yelling at me and pointing and hitting me with spell balls and arrows and everything. And I just kind of stepped to the side and decided to retrieve weapons and arrows for people for a while, because I thought that was more useful than standing dumbfounded. So yeah, I definitely identify with that on a spiritual level.
We're facing this interesting paradox. I don't know, it's not really a paradox, but like tug of war between, we want more people and different types of people to get into this game, right? We want to engage the players who have not been able to find that hook, right? Just so far. And for that, it requires us to lower I'm not going to say skill floor, but the floor of accessibility, right? Make it as easy as it can be to step on the field and play the game.
Right.
But we want to keep the ceiling where it is, or arguably you could say higher if we want to, so that mastery and expression of skill can still come out. The trick is balancing the two, because when you move one, the other, it's hard to get that in a sweet spot. And a lot of veterans who put tons of time into the game are worried that we're going to dumb down the game or oversimplify it, and they won't be able to have those levels of mastery. Or, and I don't necessarily agree with them on this one, but they're like, oh, I don't want you to make it easier for some newbie to be able to kill me, because I already get fingered of death by a random newbie playing wizard or whatever, right?
We got to work on the phrasing for that one. I mean, just keep sword belt super hard to get, and the old heads will leave you alone.
That's not on them though. That's a ward committee stuff.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I could talk about accessibility forever. But one of the things you mentioned of making an audio companion for the rule book, we actually reached out to do that a while back. I don't know if I reached out to the right person, but we reached out to the marketing lead at that time, because it would involve like chapterizing the book and then doing a read through. We'd probably use Flo's sultry baritone and then just like throw it on Spotify, like chapter 1, boom, and then you just put it there, because we already know how to do that, and it would be super. We have the equipment for it. It'd be super easy. We never heard back on it. So if you're still looking into that,
my wife is also looking to do that as well. I think she mentioned it actually when she was on your podcast.
Yeah. Admiral and I had a really great conversation about I'm dyslexic, and so I still can't do the healing can't. I've tried for like a year and I still fuck it up really bad. And so we were joking about like I carry around a boom box and like press the healing can't button or whatever. And then also other interesting things that you could do with recording, and of course recording the rule book. So
actually, you brought up a perfect thing, and I'm sorry I'm going to tangent away from the recording part.
That's so
this is our regular show.
Yeah, right.
But the accommodation thing, like the boombox, I think one of the most important things for accessibility in our rule book is to say it is okay to make accessibility accommodations, to change the rules if you need to accommodate one person. Because there are some people that I've seen, they'll show up and they'll be like, hey, I'm not feeling great today. Can I play something where, you know, like if someone comes close to me, I can just die? Or can I play it this way? Is there any way I can still play today within X limitation? Right. Or I am just a new player. I have X disability. Can you help? And they go, the rules don't say I can do that for you. So no.
Man, as nonprofits, we got to be better about that. No joke. ADA is a whole ass thing that we got to, you know.
I wish that I could remember their name. There used to be someone in the Principality of Winter's Edge a long, long time ago. Really, really cool person, but they had a stutter. And so they could never play this was during V7 at the time. They could never play a caster class because people would, I'm going to say not in a mean way, but I don't know if there wasn't. That might be being colored by the era that I lived through at that time, right? They would say, well, that's not the spell. You know, they would be trying to say the heal spell, but then they would stutter and go, no, you have to start over. So yeah, there's definitely some very practical applications for this kind of stuff that I'm sure that we could all sit down and think of a dozen other, and having a clear and simple solution to that that's outlined in the rule book is going to be a great way to go moving forward.
Yeah.
I was going to say the two things that stuck out whenever I was in the rules rep position, there was a really interesting conversation about color blindness as far as sashes and stuff like that goes. And the other one we touched on was the audio processing. Like just an average person, what is like the processing level on the number of things going on at one time that you can keep track of? And that's really interesting stuff because I never really thought about it, and it is incredible for our game to use these things in a good way, you know.
Hey, y'all think sash colors though? For real?
Yeah.
I'm one of those colorblind.
Cabbage is colorblind,
Yeah.
and so he tells a funny story of getting into this fight and going, "Is this a bard, a warrior, or something else,
Or a monk with an old dirty sash?"
Yeah. Oh, he's yelling at me. Probably a bard.
Yeah.
We broke that down, the conversation that Teflon's talking about. We broke it down, and other colorblind players near here, they have the issue with spell balls, right? Where they told us like there are a couple spell balls. I think it's like Abeyance, Entangle, and Fireball, and it's like they all look the same, but how you defend against them is all completely different, right? So their suggestion was if we're gonna stay with the colors, which they're like, you know, we've already essentially baked it into the game, try to make it so things that could get confused are similar.
You
at
react
the very
the same
least.
way to the
Oh, that's clever. Yeah.
I like
things
that.
like if you want to take this on the shield versus your armor versus just dodge,
Mhm.
all the dodge things to a colorblind person should probably look similar.
Yeah.
So that if there's the
Blue
fine-
means dodge, yellowy, greeny means block
Yeah.
it, and then you have black and white and gray, right?
Yeah, that's my rainbow.
And this is
I'll-
also happening in V8 with paladin and anti-paladin class identifiers. We were talking about contrast, like can we require that the black or white dragon or phoenix be on a contrasting color
Yeah.
if that's not necessarily going to show up as a contrast to someone who's colorblind? Things like that. So this is a thing that's also happening in V8, and anything that the rules are deciding in V8 probably will carry through to V9 for that specific case, but
Mhm.
hope it might end up getting lost in committee and we have to go decide it ourselves in V9.
Right, I got you. It's just an interesting like field to explore because accessibility means something different to like every person.
Right.
Like that's, I mean, realistically, when you're designing things for accessibility, there's not a list of checkboxes, right? You don't just get to go through and check things off a list and say we've got it. You almost have to design custom for every specific use case, which you can't do. I mean, even the best companies in the world can't do it. But it's just interesting to know that that's something that's being considered in V9 because I don't think up until here it really has. I mean, lately, like you said, rules reps making changes to V8, yeah, but being designed into the next rule book is kind of cool.
Doing the research is important. Like, I hope that whoever picks up V10 is able to look back at what we've done and go, okay, we need to live up to that. Because, you know, if any of you have been in office, you know, as soon as you step down from office, if you did a good job, you're like, well, I hope this all doesn't just go to shit now that I'm gone.
Wunjo, you're going to do a great job with V10.
So I'm going to segue this into just talking about Cord, who wasn't able to be here, but I am infinitely blessed that Cord is on our team because Cord was on the V8 team.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
he's probably like the best person from the V8 team to have on this team. Infer from that what you will. And he's just been able to tell us so much about why decisions were made and be honest about it. Like he has been more than willing to say, yeah, we fucked up on that one, or
That's
yeah,
fair.
this exists because someone wanted to just buff something they liked, or why is the heal spell so long despite being a level 1 ability? Well, because the COM at the time was like, it's tradition, keep it. And they're like, okay, can we at least remove the repetition every other line? Like, okay, fine. So that's, if you want to know why heal is still long, that
I
there
can't
was a
actually
shorter
say the heal spell now. I can't say it because I for so long,
Because you only say sword cut, spear, stab, mace,
I
smash,
started
arrow, jab
off,
once.
Yeah.
and so I started off with that repetition every single line, and like no, that's not it anymore. Flo,
Yeah. 10-ish years or more
of doing
that has ruined me for the heal spell. So just swift heal is the only thing I take anymore.
Yeah.
I was joking that we should continue the the reduction of the heal spell till the incant is just sword cut, spear stab, mace smash, arrow jab, and anyone starting the game has like, why is that the heal spell?
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Come along, children. I have a story to tell you.
I mean, I guess kind of segueing for that, I know that it was mentioned in one of the surveys. Again, because I was a rep, I don't have all the access anymore to some of the survey results, but what was kind of the result of the incantations having more role play things? Like we have the white light of healing and things like that. Was that a higher response, or did people kind of gather to like the force bolt repetition or something like that?
So people did not like giant paragraphs. People did not like the force bolt repetition. What they
Gotcha.
wanted was something in the middle. It's like they didn't want pure neutrality, but they didn't also want very specific, like Heart of the Swarm, exacting. This is, yeah.
Gotcha.
That's going to be something we're going to have to explore in the lore end of things as well, deciding how much lore we're going to bake into the game, right? Because people want some direction. So
Yeah.
V9 may have a like very faint something as opposed to the current now, which is just here's some flavorful quotes in the rule book.
If you do it right, you could kill themed reigns forever. Please think about this.
People
save
really
us
like
all.
themed reigns.
No, they don't.
I think
They don't. I'm people. I hate them.
you are one people. You do not move the needle.
Two people.
Two
About
people.
Two people. I think.
Two
I think.
ex-monarchs.
I like themed reigns.
Get out.
And I cannot lie.
Go home, Flo.
I'm home.
One thing though
Damn,
is
that's
interesting is also the consideration of anything that you put in the rulebook as flavor, someone somewhere will read as mechanics.
Yeah, that is the unfortunate part about it.
And so the things like the Royal Amtgard Navy quote in the V8 rulebook, I don't think there's a quote about how the Royal Amtgard Navy hunts vampires. Like, I don't think that degree of specificity is needed. And I don't think anyone realistically like thinks there's a Royal Amtgard Navy that hunts vampires. But if someone is, I don't want someone to read that and be like, oh, if we have a Navy faction in our local role play, they have to be vampire hunters because that's Amtgard lore.
Right. Yeah, that's bridging, I think, a bridge too far for like the normal quote unquote LARPy LARPs or lightest touch versus Amtgard, because we are a very open to a lot of things kind of game, whereas theirs are typically a closed world and have to exist. But
Exactly.
at the same time, like I don't know, I feel like the white light of healing type thing being a kind of a theme inside of the spirit magic or something like that could be a really big thing, so that like each class of magic or whatever has kind of a thing that has a theme around it. It would be awesome to me personally, because I think it's something that can gain a little bit of lore behind it without having to go like into this like closed world mechanic, I guess.
It's simple. The white light of healing is good. Do you believe in God, Jeffrey?
Okay, alternatively, what is the Navy going to do if not hunt vampires?
No. Hold on. I did a quick Googling on this while you were talking about it. There is a long ass wiki page on the
Oh,
Amtgard
it's
Navy.
huge.
I did
Yeah,
not know.
no, it's a whole deep lore.
I mean, I've read the rule book, I think, but like I don't remember all this. And there's a poem. There's,
Yeah.
I mean, this is like 3 pages of scroll.
The Treaty of Ben's living room is in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the what was called the verdict of Enoch for a while. I think
Oh, does this tie back to that?
yeah, where
No vampires.
no vampires in Amtgard. Like at the time that Anne Rice, who, if you haven't heard yet, Anne Rice recently passed away. But Anne Rice, about the time all of the Vampire Lestat books and all of that was coming out, everyone that was joining Amtgard was picking up a vampire persona. And so the monarch at the time of Burning Lands outlawed all vampire personas in character and put like a bounty on all vampire heads. So people, they had a lot of roleplay stuff going on where they would bring them vampires and expose them to the light, that sort of thing.
Wow.
No idea.
That's amazing.
I'm just like, this article's long. Too.
We had a Vampire the Masquerade invasion angle for a while here, where a bunch of like Vampire the Masquerade players joined Amtgard, and they're like,
That's really cool.
what if our characters just came to Amtgardia, whatever you want to call it, and they just started playing Havoc, like, oh, the rules of the world are different, so we're gonna have to adapt. And then it was just, but they still played with the like lore of World of Darkness as
That's
their
actually super
backstory.
cool.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Well, so I
Yeah.
actually did something kind of fun, similar to that in reverse with a local LARP here. I for context, this is in Rochester, New York. There is a local LARP, and a friend of mine invited me to it, and they're like, I had the name of the LARP, and that was it. That was the entire context. They go to this house at this time. It's a friend of mine. We're going to be doing a LARP called Blah. And because it's a local LARP, nothing online about it. There's a Facebook group that has like a rule book, and there's like a couple of abilities listed, but nothing else.
Okay,
And so
that
I
is
show
the
up.
entire premise to an episode of What We Do in the Shadows.
No
So I
joke.
show up in this tunic and my full garb and all this, and it's a modern day LARP.
Good. Like, why are you dressed funny?
So my character got lost on the way to Hell LARP and showed up in this other
That
setting.
is purely amazing. I love it so much.
So good.
So, a subject change and question for you, because I know that a subset of our listeners, I think a rather large one, is going to want this question asked. Talk to me about armor.
Oh god. A specific subset of our listeners named Heralder.
Hey, he's trying to break out of that.
Okay,
I found out.
so as we build V9, we
Mhm.
have a little meter. You can picture it on screen if you're looking right now. And this is the hate meter. And everything we do adds to the hate meter. And if the hate meter ever gets full, everyone explodes and Amtgard is over, and that everyone spawns their own spin-offs of Amtgard and problems.
Right.
So our
Bombs
job is
outside
to
our doors,
build
you know.
V9 while managing this hate meter. And part of that is to go which changes are needed and which changes are worth the hate that they may or not generate. The changes to armor and the armor ecosystem are, I think, needed, but also, oh my God, it's like 75% of this hate bar.
This is the worst Final Fantasy boss I've ever heard of.
Yeah. There's a lot of ideas and a lot of opinions on what should happen with armor. Because of the high level of investment, either physically or financially, into armor, everyone that is currently into armor does not want their armor to be worth less than it is now. And you can see how that could be at odds with the accessibility thing, because they're going from the mindset of, I had to do this much to get to where I am. I don't want anyone else to be able to do it for less, right? So even just something as saying, hey, bringing the standard to aluminum as opposed to the standard being steel. Some people are like, no, that's not okay. I have all this steel armor, right?
I spent, $500 getting all of the leather and steel and learning to cut it and just the equipment to do it. And now you're telling me that someone can just go buy this and do it.
Yes.
I totally get that argument. That was something that came up when V8 was coming out too, and they reduced some of the armor values, and it caused a lot of problems then. I am in a position where I never invested heavily into armor, but I do know quite a few people that have, and I completely I completely get where they are. I am also rather humbly asking that this is something that as a game we are going to have to move past. This isn't on the V9 committee. I'm speaking to all of our listeners right now, all of the people that are actually making that armor. I'm not trying to take away from all of the work that you put in. Everyone here, all of the other listeners, understand both the financial and the time investment that you put in. But these haven't been updated majorly in a very, very long time. And we're now in a different place in the world than we were back when I started and you started and all of those other people started. I'm sorry. That's where I'm at.
I don't buy into the because it was expensive for me, it should be expensive for everyone else. Like, no.
Someone was telling me about their armor kit and it was $2,000. And I was like, that costs more than my car.
Yeah.
I was going to say, that's a kind of nice car here in Knoxville, Tennessee.
So many McChickens.
Other than, I think, archery, other than archery, armor is one of the most expensive things to get into as a base piece of kit. And that's why I am going after it so heavily in terms of trying to get it down, because it's not like a sphere of annihilation where you don't have to go down that path if you don't want to. If one sphere of annihilation was like $300 to make,
right,
I could maybe justify that by being like, that's a very specific avenue you need to choose to take to get to that. Armor is something that we want to see everyone wearing. If we keep the rules at a standard where it's a crafter's market, so to speak, and it's expensive,
you're locking people out of certain things.
It just brings up that magical armor becomes the norm, so to speak. So I think we run into that problem, which is I know a whole nother issue that you guys have ran into on it as well.
I don't know if I mentioned this last time I was here, but I think the current Amtgard or armor rules has created this survivor bias of crafters in the armor scene, where if you don't craft armor or have a hookup, you just don't get armor in this game, right? Unless you have money or a hookup, it's way too hard to get into. My wife has tons of armor. She's made it all, right? All my friends who have armor, they've made it or they got it for cheap at some random yard sale they found, or they have a lot of money and they just show up in like resplendent gold armor and they're like, haha, behold my doctor armor.
That's doctor armor to you. I didn't go to armor medical school for 8 years.
But you know, and on the flip side, I think a lot of people knee jerk to thinking when we say, hey, we want to bring the accessibility down, they're imagining like a guy going to Spirit Halloween, showing up with that like t-shirt with chainmail on it and being like, yes, 4 points.
You mean, what's wrong with that, man? It looks like armor.
The 10-foot rule, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so here, actually, question. You guys can answer in turn what you think about this.
Sure.
Do you think that Amtgard needs to have all the modifiers for armor? Armor is the only part of the game right now that is so granular that you get bonuses for how you make it. Weapons, it's here's your different categories. That's it. Shields, it's what is the size? There you go. But armor is so granular. How ungranular do you think armor should or should not be? Or should it be more granular?
Or could be.
So I guess I'll go first because like I have a fairly formulated opinion about this. So I really like the 1, 2, 3 kind of idea. So it's heavy, light, medium, and then you just kind of give the description of what armors typically fall in these things, and then you're done. There's no modifiers. There's no up and down. Nothing. Maybe inside a class like warrior or something like that, you might get a bump from like a medium to a heavy armor because you're specialized in armor or something along those lines. But for armor alone, it just falls into 1, 2, 3. That's it.
Cool. We'll respond to all of them together, so we don't bias.
It's hard because I want to have a nuanced take on this, but at the same time, I fucking hate how armor's done currently. So it's really hard for me to say anything other than I hate how segmented it is and how specific it is. I would agree with Jeff that like the 1, 2, 3 system makes sense. But I feel like there's a way to do it simpler, and we're just not like I particularly am just not there on figuring out how it should work. So I don't like how segmented it is. I feel like there's an easier way.
Vidalia?
I mean, I agree with Jeff here. Teflon.
Damn it! I should have gone last.
But I was gonna say, like, as long as it looks right, that would be, does that look like armor? Yes, no.
I guess to add to it,
yeah,
aluminum would have been my standard as far as meadows go as well.
Yeah, it's fine.
See, I would even go looser. Like if it looks like metal, if you thump it.
Man, you want to bring back getting the catcher guard plate mail,
yeah.
Or I think that what you may have been referring to, because you and I have talked about this before, was people doing like the plasta dipped armor and stuff like that still looks super quality.
Like if you follow any of the cosplay channels and they come out like in the full fucking Diablo cosplay or whatever, and it looks like plate armor, but it's actually the foam. I'm fine with that. Like we fight each other with foam swords. Why can't our armor be foam too?
So I have listened to both of your things, not all of the second one. With stuff like this, I don't tend towards popular opinion. I tend towards data-driven decision making, which I know is a big hallmark for the V9 crew as well. Here are some actual things that the people that have responded to the polls have said over and over and over again, and you've reported on in different Gathering of the Crown meetings and COM meetings over and over and over again. Having a lot of armor when you're in the middle of a blender combat is hard to keep track of. Even if you are mentally able to keep track of everything that's happening, people are
steel, you can't feel it sometimes.
Well, people are then expecting you to be able to call, and you may be getting hit in multiple locations at once and give updates to your armor. And let's face it, most people can only do 2 to 3 things at once. Moving, fighting, calling shots, putting on makeup while they're up there. They can only do 3 things at once. Most people can actually only do 2 good at once. So having a high value of armor, while it is absolutely traditional in the game, comes with some problems. That alone doesn't mean that we should get rid of 6 points of armor. but it is something to consider. It is direct feedback that we should consider when we're looking at this problem. Second, in our game, the higher values of armor are, for many people, cost prohibitive, skill prohibitive, perhaps.
I mean, fighting in armor is a skill in and of itself as well.
Sure,
There is an kind of accessibility issue with just fighting in armor in the sense of calling shots and things like that as well.
Yes. And third, we are in a position where we have a pretty simple solution to this, but it would require a larger change to the way that several of our abilities interact. The easy solution, which Jeff named, he went first, is reducing the armor value in some way. Maybe not 3, maybe it's some other number, but in some way making it easier to keep track of all of these things that are going on, right? So this is a long way of saying that I'm not tied to the light, medium, heavy, though I think that is a very straightforward and easy system to use. It would require big changes to other parts of the rules, which I know that you're not looking forward to. Arrows specifically, in the way that they interact with armor, a lot of the abilities that warriors and other armor-wearing classes have. I don't envy you trying to sort all of that mess out. My big thing here is we have identified a rather large problem that every single person listening to this that has ever been out on field, when someone was in a lot of armor, can identify with. That person was absolutely trying to do their best. Whoever was in multiple points of armor at your last big kingdom event, especially if they had a pocket healer behind them who was mending them up or something like that, it is a nightmare to keep track of, and all of us know it.
Well, so I mean, a thing that sticks out to me is like armor could almost just be seconds of invulnerability. Like, you're wearing medium armor, you get 5 seconds of not taking that, and you could space that out however many seconds you want, like 1 or 2. Okay, that didn't count, and then whatever, right? But like when you get into these larger pitch battles, like I have been in more situations where the warrior was not keeping track of their armor than where they were keeping track of their armor correctly. Like I've been tabled up underneath a warrior, just hammering away at him, and like, dog, this is my 27th shot. What are you doing? And it's like, I've had a Reeve literally walk up to a warrior that I was just jackhammering and go, hey, bud, you're done. Come with me.
Well, and
like the human brain actually, like, this is a weird tangent, but the human brain and so much about our physiology is actually only set up to do one complex thing at a time.
Yeah.
Like not even 2, like 1. That's why you're not supposed to text and drive, because those are both complex things and your brain cannot focus on them both at once. But
yeah,
that's different.
So this person in this hypothetical, or this actually was a real thing that happened, but let's say it's a hypothetical. This person isn't trying to blow shots.
No,
this person isn't trying to do all of those other things. This person is having a spell cast at them. They're fending off a barbarian and having to deal with a shield break thing in front of them. They've been pinned by an arrow and they're being hit in the back with by someone that's snuck around behind them. And they have 6 points of armor on every location, so they're trying to keep track of all of the hits that's going on to all of those as well. It's a nightmare. We all know it's a nightmare. This is again where this was a long way around to say I totally agree with Jeff. I think that it should just be reduced and simplified in a way, but I'm providing my reason, the ideology behind why it's not we need to take this step right here, because leaving it where we are right now at 6, I think does not solve the fundamental problem that has been repeated multiple times through all of your feedback, which is having a lot of points of armor is hard to keep track of, and we need a fix for it.
Also, real quick, for the light, medium, heavy, it was basically like leather is light, no matter what gauge, cloth is light, and that kind of thing. Medium gets a little, for me, like a little harder to deal with, but that's like chain. So that would be like flexible metal armors potentially, and there might be some wiggle room to be non-metal as well. And then heavy would be rigid metal armors. Basically, was the kind of separation that I was looking at.
What's interesting is the rulebook actually has that listed out, is that non-metal armors cap at 3, non-rigid metals cap at 4, rigid metals cap at 6.
Right.
And those are pseudo categories just in the rulebook made easy section for armor.
Right.
It's the caps at part, I think, that is unnecessarily confusing.
Yeah.
It's the caps at, and it's also the construction.
Yeah,
that's another big catch. It's people want to be able to make armor. Just like Vidalia said, if you're like, if the armor doesn't explode on impact, if it's rigid, actually rigid, like the armor it's trying to mimic, who cares what it's made out of?
Yep.
I want to just be standing 10 or 20 feet away from someone, look at them, and be able to guess how many armor points they have by what it looks like.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. And for all the people who are, I know right now, are just like flipping their screen over because we're talking about synthetics. You
Pickle
know,
barrel armor and things like that.
a very easy way to harmonize synthetics is to just put a rule on synthetics saying if a synthetic is mimicking an actual material, it needs to look like the actual material.
Thank you.
Not
Yep.
like the actual material that's been dyed or tailored with. So an example I gave before was if you're an elf and you want to have iron leaf armor, right? And you want to have like scale mail but leaves, right? So they're all dyed green and you're trying to make them look like leaves. If you do that out of steel or aluminum or an actual metal, then yeah, great, you get your points. But if you want to do that out of leather and make them look like metal leaves, that's not good, because now you're kind of too many degrees away from original. Right. So
Right.
if you want to have leather plate mail, let's say you have a hookup for leather, you're a leather crafter, but you want to make a suit of plate mail, you're going to put the rivets, you're going to, metallicize it, make it look like plate mail. Everyone's seen those pictures online, which is
Sure. Yeah.
a suit of hold on, coughing. A suit of plate mail made out of leather. If you want to do that and you make that leather look like metal, I think that should be 100% able to pass.
I think it allows for more interesting and visually appealing armor sets, because now you have like the EVA foam chainmail and plate mail
So cool.
that you can do, and it looks really nice. Like what the cosplayers are doing, they look really nice, and it would add on significantly to our curb appeal, rather than me just like walking out in a dented trash can, and because it's made out of metal, it still counts, right? Like
The tin can armor.
Yeah.
Don't make fun of my dented.
If I
trash can
fall
armor.
in this, all my arms and legs get cut off by the serrated
exactly.
edges.
we've seen suits of armor like
Yeah.
that, unfortunately. But I mean, also you run into the problem of like, that's plate mail, it's probably worth this, and then actually this is fluted, so it's got the +1, and you're like, well, fuck me, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
20.
Your question was originally about the modifiers, and I forgot to mention, I just don't want any of the modifiers. I don't want to be in a position where, because in one of your talks, I think it was the one that you gave at Gathering of the Crowns originally, you had talked about the fact that the other problem that you face is armor being rated differently at different parks.
Yeah.
And we all talked around the solution to it being rated differently at different parks, and that was simplifying those rules in some way. But the modifiers specifically, which was your question, that I don't think that we properly addressed. I hate them. I don't like them. I don't want them. I don't think that they add anything other than to the crafter that made them. And the only reason they add something to the crafter that made them is because the crafter saw that there were ways to mod it to get more points and said, I'm going to include that in my armor.
It is a very small part of the game that lets you, it fills that crafting fantasy, right? You go,
Sure.
I have forged this armor, and because I forged it like this, it is actually in the game better. And that is really cool. And it's like, we know that. We don't want to, we are sad that we would need to take that away, but that is kind of a greater good needs of the many kind of situation.
Well, here is your owl for making really cool armor.
Well,
Yeah.
and I hate to do this. I hate to do this too, because I know that I'm probably making an argument that's been made that is like derogatory isn't the word, but is a downplay to the crafters. And I don't mean to do that. I don't know that it is, but I'm assuming that it's going to be. If you go to Bell or Dag or something like that, no matter what you're wearing, whether it's leather to plate, you get 1 point. That's it. And they still have people that make beautiful plate. They still have people that do beautiful leather work.
That's kind of the thing, that we don't necessarily have to have modifiers and stuff. They can be a class inside the armor. So like, this is obviously not necessarily looked at balance in my opinion of it, but like, if you're wearing heavy armor, then arrows don't affect it, or something along those lines. So the bonus is inherent to the type of armor, and it's not directly linked to the number of hits that's taken and things like that. So there are other potentially creative ways around losing the number of hits that you can take based on potentially immunities or some other kind of thing with the armor alone.
And
Yeah.
just disclaimer again, anything we're saying here is
Right.
subject to change, not necessarily going to happen, even if myself or Gorovan be like, yes, we like that. But you know, even what Cabbage said with the 5-second
immunity.
invulnerability, we're not looking for those because we're like, yes, we're going to use exactly that.
Right.
We want to hear all the crazy ideas, because that's us sifting through the grains of sand, and you never know when you find that diamond in the rough. And I've had so many eureka moments where someone comes on and goes, hey, what about this wacky idea? And in like paragraph 3, subsection 2 of that idea, I'm like, oh my God, that solves like 7 different problems. Just that. And he's just like, but what do you think of my idea? I'm like, no. Just this.
All this is bad, but this one part is absolute diamond, and you're an amazing person for saying it.
Yeah.
I think also one thing that came up was the idea of curb appeal, and people wearing armor looks good. It looks more fantasy, especially because our garb standards are inconsistent. And personal opinion here, I don't think standardized garb is necessarily a realistic future for Amtgard.
No,
I don't want to get into that. But I think that like having the aesthetic of armor adds draw to people wanting to come play, not necessarily because they think it looks real and authentic and historic, but because it looks like their fantasy that they want to play out in Amtgard.
Yeah.
No, let's be honest. Real and historic armor is often kind of boring.
Exactly.
The fantasy stuff, the Lord of the Rings shit that they've seen is what we actually want to give them access to in some way.
So I'm gonna make a bunch of weebs pop off right now.
Oh,
but
please, God,
if
go.
you were to compare all the different like vibes of that, I think different LARPs do, Amtgard is the like real world characters pulled into an MMO type vibe.
Yeah,
they are not they're not like born and raised in medieval times. They're a modern person being like, I'm in a video game. I'm gonna have fun with it. That's the vibe.
We're League
of
of Legends,
Amtgard.
aren't we?
Yeah.
We're an isekai.
It's an isekai.
Okay.
Is,
I
that's your
don't
dot
actually
hack.
watch anime. I just have a lot of friends that do.
That's your dot hack, your sword art online. All of those are
Yep.
isekais, and so it's like, you know, there's what is it? The time I got reincarnated as a demon lord is the one we were watching. Dude gets sucked into an MMO and he's a high level character in a world full of newbies. It's kind of fun. But you also with armor, you run into, talking about curb appeal, you run into the paladin problem where somebody comes in and they go, oh, I want to wear the armor, and it's like, cool. Here's where you can buy it, and it costs this many dollars, and goodbye. Oh, he's gone. And it's, you know, as soon as you start floating out the figures or the time or the amount of effort it takes, they look at it and they go, nah, that's not for me. And they walk off. And I mean, that's, you know,
we do very much know that no matter what we do, we can't reduce the investment of armor to zero.
Right.
I just hope in the ways we tackle it, we can allow more different avenues. So it's not just, do you want chainmail? Well, this is the one narrow path you can take. You know, maybe you buy it, maybe you make it, but like, that's it. It must be these metals, and you go. Yeah. I'd like there to be, oh, you have a leather hookup, you have a cosplay hookup that can make something that can actually take a hit and, you know, be fallen on.
Yeah.
You can fall on it.
It can be on.
And I want to say again too that if you were listening to this and you were nodding along with something that one of us said, something that the V9 crew said, or you were on the opposite end of the spectrum going, I can't believe that, you know, that Cabbage would say something like that, or Flo holds that opinion.
I can't believe I say half the shit I say.
Or something like
you
that.
And me both, pal.
Wunjo and leaf armor?
Yeah. That's all that everyone's going to take. It's just leaf armor.
Yeah. No matter what side of this, we need to have a character drawn up of you in leaf armor. Now,
B9 lets you make your armor out of leaves.
No matter what side of this you fall down on, whether you agreed or disagreed with this, you've got to speak up about stuff like this. If this is important to you, you've got to take the time to go through some of the surveys and stuff that they're putting out, answer some of the questions they have, give your feedback, or guess what? You're spitting into the wind. You're just bitching to your friends about something that isn't going to reflect what you would like it to. you could be that great idea that V9 says this solves so many of our problems.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if you'd like to solve some problems, you should smash that like button. And if you get, if WAK gets 1 million likes on this video, which is impossible because I know how many people play Amtgard, but if you can get to that, let's put something realistic. If you guys get 3,000 likes on this thing somewhere, I will do my damnedest to add cabbage mail as an artifact in V9, and it will be the leaf armor.
Excellent.
My cabbage.
Seriously though, the surveys will be linked down below. If there's 3,000 likes on this video, there better be 3,000 survey responses, because what the hell else are you doing?
And could we get maybe 500 total people of those to sub?
No.
I'm asking for a friend.
No,
I'm
There's
different.
like 500 total
I
dollars.
legit, before Wunjo went into the smash the like button thing, thought you were 100% lining up for it by yourself.
I was, but me and Wunjo are in a groove right
Oh,
now.
fair enough.
Yeah.
No, but those surveys will be linked in the comments below, and yeah, if you disagree with anything any of us have said, or if you agree, whatever, you got to fill out that survey so that these people know how to take that feedback further. Gorovan, I actually wanted to pass something to you, because with all new guests on the show, we kind of want to know how you got into Amtgard and your story and everything else. And as we're kind of approaching this hour and a half mark, which is a little bit of a hard stop because of our SD card.
Yeah.
The heat death of the show.
Yes, that's
the
right.
heat death of this SanDisk SD card that has served us for many months. As we're approaching that, I do want to kind of get your story and let people know who you are as well, because so far you're a member of the V9 team, but how'd you get into Amtgard? What's your story?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, I started in Manhattan. So it actually started because my mom's like, you got to get a summer job. And so I was kind of had that in the back of my mind. I was looking around, and then Dungeons & Dragons 5e went into beta, and I wanted to try it out. And I went to a local game store. It was like, I want to try it, and I ended up playing a couple D&D games. And the owner was like, hey, you like D&D? You're a kid, so I can pay you less. Come work at my summer camp. And so I worked at a board game store summer camp. And it was like every day they would come in and play a new board game, and it was an extension of their after school program. And as one of the summer activities, they started a mini LARP
Nice.
for the kids. And my manager, who was an Amtgarder, was like, I'm going to teach everyone and all the staff how to be a LARPer by bringing you all to Amtgard.
That's gotta be one of my favorite ways someone has gotten into the game.
Child labor,
Yeah.
sometimes okay.
So I was 16 in taking the subway into Central Park and playing Amtgard. And I've been here ever since.
That's awesome.
I've gone to college. There was a chapter of the city where my college was. I've now graduated college, and I am now still playing at Amtgard at the same chapter. And yeah.
That's fantastic. And then we also try to get, as Wunjo alluded to earlier, we try to get like a funny story, a memorable moment. Like, do you have anything that stands out to you in your Amtgard career? In your Amtgard history that, like,
Sure. So the first time, so we started playing Amtgard like in the park near where our work was,
Mhm.
which was not Central Park. It's a park in Brooklyn. And so I hadn't actually been to the actual field for like the first month or so of me playing. And so it was just like a bunch of my coworkers and no actual LARPers. It was just like us with the rule book and the one dude who knew how to play. And the first day that I actually like make it out to Central Park, we're right behind the Metropolitan Museum of Art. There's an obelisk behind the museum, and that's our meeting spot.
That's cool.
And I show up, and I know nobody. The guy I know hasn't shown up yet. There's like 3 people who I've like, I think I saw them once, maybe on the way to, they picked up my coworker on the way to an event, and that's the entire time I've seen them. And they're like, hey, we're running a quest. Do you want to be a bear person?
Yes.
I'm like, sure, okay. Now in V8, the door has the bear people who have hard to kill, so they don't die to limb wounds. So my bear person's motivation was that the well is poisoned. Go get Lassie. Go get the adventurers to come and fix our well that is turning the bear folk mad. And then as soon as they get there, by the way, I'm also poisoned and I go into a frenzy. So the PCs decided the best solution was to cut off all of my arms and legs and just interrogate me.
God,
as a stump with a head.
This is a D&D campaign now.
And this is my first day of Amtgard. And that's how I got into Amtgard, was being the limbless bear person who got the adventurers to check out their well.
Excellent.
That is straight up the murder hobo. Like, all right,
Yeah.
what do we got to do? Violence and answers. All right, got it. Check.
Violence and answers. Yeah.
The answers to most problems, right?
Right.
Crushing violence.
Apply violence directly to the wound.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gratuitous
100%.
violence.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Well, do we have any sort of wrap up questions for?
Did you guys have anything that you wanted to plug?
I had a wrap up thing I wanted to do that ties into this goofy hat that I'm wearing. How much time do we have?
Yeah, you got time.
Yeah, you got.
Don't
you
worry
got
too
plenty
much
of
about
time.
time.
All right. I don't know when this is coming out, but at the time right now, we're nearing the holidays, and Santa Wunjo here would like to know what each of you, if you had one wish for V9 to magically appear under your tree, what would each of you like? One change. You could do anything. What would you do?
I got to use this wisely. There's never been so much pressure.
I don't have
I'll
to
go
use it
first.
wisely.
I
This
know
is
what
like
I
when we
want.
ask our guests for a funny
I
story.
know,
and they're
like,
like,
I'm
I don't know.
struggling.
I'm like, oh, what do I want? So many things.
I know exactly what I want. Okay. So you know when barbarians get like brutal strike or things like that, and it has to be a kill trigger or a wound trigger for their abilities, I would like it to be on contact. Because you know, you have casters and stuff and they get to do their spells, and it doesn't have to be like on contact. They can just shove people or like have a spell ball that contacts a shield or armor or whatever, and it still goes off. I think that would allow more use of my barbarian abilities rather than just like, fuck you, I'm wearing armor and it doesn't count.
Manama, right before he got like shut down by the COM for starting a playtest during the rules moratorium, he actually started a playtest as the rules rep of Rising Winds that had exactly that. It was Brutal Strike was on hit. So you can whack someone's shield and go Brutal Strike, and they were cursed and suppressed. And it was actually really good. So that's not saying we're going to do anything with it. I'm just saying that I conveniently just got to try that. And yeah, it was actually really neat.
Yeah, I think it's a design space that is new, but like very easy to understand.
Like, it doesn't just have to be Brutal Strike, but
Yeah,
whatever.
like
other
a spell strike type idea
Yes.
of imparting an effect by whack.
Yeah.
bonk.
Bing bong. God, what do I want? I like the easy one, right? Is give Bard's Mimic or give Bard's Legend, but I don't want to take the easy path home here. I got to find something better. I like
Doomsday, obviously.
Doomsday is fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so these episodes are going to be in a weird. This episode will come out Friday, but we've already shot the episode for Christmas where I tell a fun story about Doomsday, and so it's weird that this is coming up twice in a row. But yeah, Doomsday would be fun. No, I honestly, dumb thing, but back shields, just
Get out.
Damn
No,
it.
end it now. Goodbye.
Hey, wait, I haven't got
Christmas
to
is canceled.
Christmas is over. Everyone go home. I like back shields. They're neat. And our
Call
DAG
for you.
players, our DAG players will, play more maybe.
As a DAG cross gamer, I don't want back shields. But that's because I'm bad and I can't fight them.
Maybe back shield solves the armor problem.
Oh no.
Oh no.
We got your front shield and back shield and
Sandwich board. Like,
We actually one of the things we've been trying to do with V9 is look at everything that exists, everything that's been moved forward as why do we do this? Because, right? And ask why. No, like actually why. And if there's no actual answer, we just take it as though it was a new thing. So we sat down and went, okay, why are atlatls not allowed? Like, we know it's a meme, but like actually why? Why are slingshots not allowed? And now if you ask me, I could tell you.
I want to change mine because I do know what I want.
better not be Adelaide.
It's not atlatls. Shield bow. I want to be able to use shield and bow at same time.
Oh, I thought you meant
like
a
V7
shield
and
with a bow inside of it.
That's
Also
Yeah.
that.
I mean,
That's what he wants.
conveniently, it opens up that avenue as well.
Yeah, I just want like a shield with a rectangle cut out of it and a bow stuck to the back of it that I can shoot through.
A vis.
Give me shield bow.
Vidalia, do you have one?
Madu bow.
She
Oh,
got
I
one.
already got one.
Yeah.
But if I get another
one
one,
new.
I want more Conan references in the V9 rulebook.
Do you want me to go or you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So one of the things that I think I miss about like V6, 7 is kind of the uniqueness of the classes, and it creates like an affinity that someone's like, oh yeah, I play druid, or I play wizard, or I play warrior, or something like that. And with kind of the homogenization of some of the skills and abilities and things, I think we lose a little bit of that. So if we could make them a little more unique to what they're doing, but that's a really hard one, because whenever you start doing that, it becomes the quote unquote rock paper scissors thing becomes a problem, because it's kind of the hard counter aspect. But if we were soft counters and unique classes, that's I think what I would love to see.
Class identity is a huge topic of discussion, and also one of the big things we're trying to glean from these class surveys.
I mean,
all the
that's
surveys have, I think, 3 questions that basically boil down to, what is this class to you?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? So we know what everyone thinks it is.
It's like, what do you think of archers? What is like in media? What is an archer? Why do you play archer? Like, all those questions are like all these different realms of class identity.
Yeah. Could that be something as simple as changing the spell names? I know that would add.
Oh,
more
that's what I was
confusion,
going to say, is like the incantations for things, if they're a little more unique to like the class or the school of magic, I think kind of accidentally does a little bit of that.
Yeah, like wizard gets shove and bard gets like won't get. And they're the same. They have the same effect, but they're class.
I mean, we
specific.
did that, and that's I think why we kind of homogenize some,
that's fair.
so that it's less rules or less things for someone to memorize coming into it. But
so mine is also about battle game stuff, specifically about the abilities that classes get. When we switched from 7 to 8, there was a big attempt made to put some, what I'm going to refer to as combo style abilities in. The wicked flee while I shall pursue, I shall overcome, or freezing someone and then shattering them, or making someone either insubstantial or finding someone that's insubstantial and dragging them below, and all of these other things. But because everything gets min-maxed, because we all came from D&D characters that were min-maxed, a lot of these just get forgotten. A lot of them don't get used. It's not seen as a good use of your spell points to have to use 2 different abilities to get rid of someone or something like that. That's not always true, but it's definitely feedback that I've heard from our really, really high level battle gamers. My wish list would be that those are combined in some way, so that I don't mean the spell specifically is combined, but those are made in some way so that they are useful, not just in a role play context or something like that, but they're useful in battle games. So maybe my idea here would decrease the total number of spells that you're working with, but increase a single spell's utility in some way. And not just for magic classes, but for every class in the game. I think that would be a cool thing.
Something like, instead of stopped to dragged below, you have like stopped to like 3 different other spell conditions off of stop, or something like that. Is that what you're after?
Yeah, like that. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think one prime case of this is I started druid, and my thing was like bark skin versus imbue armor. They both give you one point of armor in each location, that they're either you don't have armor and now there's a point of magic armor, or you have armor, there's 1 more point. Why can't it just be 1 spell of, if you're wearing armor, it all goes up by 1. If you're not, you get a point.
That's exactly that's exactly correct.
Okay.
And that's harder.
Mine's a little different than what you were talking about.
Yeah, that's harder to do for some of the combat related stuff, but you absolutely have the thread of what I'm looking for there, that I feel like this could reduce our total number of spells, but there would be a lot of them accomplishing the same things. And no, you weren't completely off there, Teflon, because this is a super bad example of what I'm trying to get to here. But dragged below would handle the job of multiple spells that we have right now. It would accomplish the same thing as all of those spells.
Okay. So you're talking about, like, let's say if you're ice balled, so frozen or stopped or blow up or insubstantial, there's for each one of those, there's a kill spell associated with the state. Are you talking about like there's a state and then a kill spell that kills somebody in a state rather than having the 3 spells that just kill them?
Sort of, yeah, because I realize why all of that was set up, because we were going for very specific states, but I feel like this is I feel like this is the part of the D&D rulebook that is only used by the super high level players, except that our super high level players, when they looked over it, went, I could, and I'm not being funny when I say this, I could just play this other thing and accomplish that without having to waste multiple spell points or time casting and then casting another spell on top of it. So Wunjo, you wanted to say something, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's playing off of exactly what you're talking about. What Teflon was saying is actually very, very similar to a lot of trains of thought that are going right now, which is trying to reduce the amount of spells without reducing the depth of the game.
Yes.
Right.
That's what I'm getting at. Absolutely.
I crunched some numbers recently, and V8 has 1.5 times more spells than V7, and V8 is 1/3 enchantments compared to V7's like 1/5 or something like that.
Yeah.
And those enchantments in V8 are more complex than they were in V7. And V7 also had each like protection enchantment be its own enchantment. So 7 of the enchantments in V7 was protection from projectiles, protection from flame, protection from, and in V8 we have adaptive protection, which is 1 and 5 or 5 and 1. So to kind of talk about what Teflon, going back to that and the overwhelming overload side of things, having a verbal magic more tied to states and requirements can reduce the amount of just open verbal magic, right? Like if you have a spell that's just like shove, you just sit out there and be like, my power shoves you, my power shoves you, and you just spout names, half say shove, and people basically shove themselves, right? But if everything had a specific target requirement, then not only do you reduce the spammability of it, you also increase the likelihood that the target is going to know they're being cast on, because it is a very specific thing. If you're frozen and you are being shattered, odds are you're generally aware of it because there's no one else that can be shattered, right? So ideas for stuff like that, like a marked, state, we've explored, because it'd be cool. Imagine if scouts basically had like a marker light arrow and you just like boop, and then people have finger. It's like unlimited range finger of death if a scout has hit you with a marker light, right? So you just call in the exterminatus beam on that one guy. But those are hard to implement because I think the example is cursed, right? How many people remember they're cursed, right? Like healers' number one complaint. Healers and assassins' number one complaint is no one actually remembers cursed when it's important. Right. People will know, like, yeah, I just died and was cursed. That assassin, he got me. And then they'll walk, or 60 seconds later, go back to the healer, and the healer will just walk up and be like, summon, res, go back out. And you'll be like, cool, I like playing the game. And you go back out and not even think about cursed.
Yeah, and it's not even malicious, right? It's just either you forgot or something along those lines, or just didn't realize the interaction or something along those.
Or don't realize that can't work. They don't know what cursed means.
Fragile is another one, right? There's no like active component to keep you remembering it, right? Frozen, stopped, those are all things where you're constantly enacting the state, so you will not know that you have that state. So if you have any ideas on how to make a marker state work in a high pressure situation,
because like I had ideas on kind of that, and it's effectively like a marker state, and then instead of like state death, it would be like state condition then maybe death, so that there's more layers to like the unfun of loss of agency or something like that in a player. But the problem becomes like, how do you mark these things? I mean, is it kind of like if we're frozen, maybe we have an X above our head with our hands or something like that? But you start getting into problems where like, if you're not frozen and you've lost all of your agency, like raising a singular hand in the air or something like that is a problem too. So like, this is where like on paper, this is amazing, but in practicality, it's very difficult to actually do.
So what if like the marked stuff is at touch, and then you have a like instead of an enchantment strip, you have a marked balloon and you hand it to them?
Okay.
A little alligator clip.
No, we can't. We can't
You have a
touch-
clothespin with a helium
All right,
balloon,
so
and you
part
just,
of everyone's
it's-
gear
It's
is we're
Teflon's birthday. No, he's just marked. It just-
He's marked
everyone's
for
gear.
death,
You
don't
have
worry
to
about
go get a helium balloon, and that way that's part of your stuff. And so that if you get marked, you go and clip it to you. So then that way you have your own marker thing. And it's got a little arrow. It's like Hunter's mark or something.
Party
My new
City
fighting
listening to
company
this
is called
podcast.
99 Red Balloons.
Yeah, right.
yes.
So
Oh.
honestly, that could be a really cool thing for someone to do in a quest or something like that. Like these kind of silly things like that can be done inside of Amtgard now if you're just a little bit creative with it.
Yeah.
We've done some
But it is not a
things.
good
We-
mechanic as a overall game mechanic.
Oh, actually, make heal a range spell. Thank you.
Okay,
base,
so
yeah.
I have two more things that I really would like to talk about, depending
Yeah,
on where
absolutely.
our time is at.
We should have about 20 more minutes.
Oh,
Are we?
I think it was one.
You made a little bit of space, so yeah, I think we've got time.
okay.
I may have
So-
to head out before we get to those last two things.
Worst
So,
case,
Do you want to
worst
make
case
your
scenario,
big grand exit there,
Leave,
Gorby?
leave dramatic.
smoke bomb?
just throw everything. We're just gonna like just smash things off the table, and I'm just gonna like not.
That is amazing. This is so good.
Oh, that was perfect. Yeah, worst-
Someone needs to message him that was absolutely perfect.
Please. Oh God, yes. Now, if we run out of recording space on the SD card, there's always the Zoom audio. It'll be a little lower quality, but if it's at like the end of the episode, I can just do like a quick cut. So like, hey guys, here's what happened, and then move on.
Yeah,
So
we've
we
got
can-
it.
Sure.
Because
We
I
go
would
over,
rather
it's
have
not
the
too bad.
valuable information rather than like stop and then we talk afterwards and be like, yeah, this would have been really good. And we're all like, man, that would have been really good to have on the episode.
Wunjo has things to say.
All right. So we're gonna do a little more talk, you guys telling us about
Perfect.
things.
Yeah.
So one of the things that a lot of people don't quite grasp yet, I think, is what is actually possible in V9. A lot of people will come and like timidly be like, hey, can you make Icy Blast like one less or at a higher level? Is that something that is within your ability to change? And we're like, that is like the shallow end of what we can change.
Right.
So I would like you guys to think of something crazy that could change. Say it out loud. The other three of you guess if it is something that is possible, or even we have thought like, oh, maybe we could change that. And then I will tell you whether or not it is something that is even possible to be changed.
We're not bringing up Jay's thing.
No, we can't. Nothing Subway has said can be discussed here.
Yeah, no.
Okay. I mean,
So just pitch an idea, and then each of you go possible or impossible, and then I will.
Okay, real possible stuff, or stuff I feel like is real possible. Just removing whole cloth a class from the game.
Okay.
I think it's legit as a possibility.
Do you think they can do it though?
I think that one would be a harder sell, but I think it could be done. Yes.
Yeah, let me clarify. It's not can we do it? It's like, is it like a possibility for V9, if that makes sense.
Are you talking about like actually pass like a COM vote kind of thing, or are you talking about like
What are you allowed to do?
yeah.
Okay, we can do both. We'll do both.
Okay.
Allowed, and would it pass?
Okay.
Or
sure.
could I sell it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me be specific then. Remove Druid.
I knew that's exactly what it was.
Would never go.
Man, I yes, it would never go, but in its current form, it mimics so many other classes that it really could be pared down into.
It's a red
other
mage
ones.
right now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Or other classes paired into it, whichever way you want to look into it.
Adding the single recipient of a Paragon flow into the rulebook.
Possible. I'm going to say that's entirely possible, and even likely.
So, Vidalia, are you going to respond to Cabbage's thing?
Oh, I was just gonna say that the spirit of Subway is moving through me, and there's now only 3 classes in the game: caster, melee, and projectile.
Fighter,
Also think
mage, and
that's
scout.
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's possible.
And then all of the abilities that we have are just things that you can pick from there.
Like a spell point. But we're
So-
not doing the exercise correctly. I said a thing. We say if we think it's something they can do.
I did it correctly.
It's like
Oh,
it's like
okay.
Family
Oh,
Feud.
okay,
It's like
okay.
Family Feud. You all
God,
Good
we would
answer, good
suck
answer.
So bad at
I
feud.
think it's plausible. Get rid of Druid.
Can you get rid of Druid one, Joe? Will you?
Okay. Do we have it within our power to get rid of a class? Yes.
Okay.
Would we do it? I do not think it is possible.
Okay.
Not even would it pass, just like for us, people have attached themselves to classes.
Yep.
The most obvious class, if we were going to cut a class, would be fusing paladin and anti-paladin. And and just make them like, this is the paladin class. You can be bad guy paladin or good guy paladin, right?
I was so
like an
about to say
Oathbreaker
that.
archetype.
Right.
But we can't, because people have attached themselves to the iconography, to the name, they are different. If I told you, if I went up to, I don't know, who's a crazy anti-paladin person? Thadagrin from CK, if you know that guy. So if you go to him and say, hey, your class is now paladin, but there's a anti-paladin archetype, that won't fly, right? And we don't want to take away that sparkle in people's eyes, right? The only way I could see maybe that I've maybe thought about doing it was as a way to get rid of the stupid symbols instead of sashes, right? To just like chop classes until we can be at that nice value again. But I don't think it's possible. Good one though.
Add rules for grappling.
No, you only get one. No,
only get one. That's a
That's
freebie.
a good one. Dang it.
Vidalia.
Well, I had 2. You guys look like idiots.
Well, I said my melee caster ranged thing.
Oh,
okay.
Really? I forgot about that.
Could we do that?
Yes.
Yes, it is totally within our ability to narrow that down. But that I feel like that's kind of a freebie because it's the same answer as classes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just, could you smoosh? Yes, we could smoosh. We do not want to smoosh. Would you like
No.
another one?
I've got another one.
No, like for real. Paid DLC. And I mean that like pay more money to get better option of class.
So
Instead of Dr. Armor, you become Dr. Paladin.
okay, not paid DLC like pay to win DLC, but there is a project in the pipeline that is basically a companion app, an official companion app for Amtgard. If we can get actual people to help work on this, because we need actual
Developers.
But one of the far end game goals for that post the functionality, which would basically be just like rulebook, spellbook app, orc all in one, would be trying to monetize some of the digital only stuff, like skins. So hey, would you pay $1 to have your Amtgard companion app be your class's color with a little cool symbol? Yeah, you'd pay $1, right?
I'd pay for
Hey,
that.
if we had your company colors or a company theme for your app, so every spell list you had a little seal with your company on it, would you pay $1 for that?
No, don't.
Yeah.
Oh,
Every triad would do it.
when you said $1, you messed up because you could have just left it and said, "What would you pay for that?"
Yes.
Untold sums.
Right? And so it's stuff like that where we can, with the app, leverage stuff like an achievement system, not something that's actually real, but something that can be tracked through the orc. Hey, have you visited 10 kingdoms? Cool, you get a badge and you unlock some sort of
God,
Pokemon thing, right?
I hate
that it's like-
okay, so I love it, but like I hate it because I'm gonna look at it and I'm gonna want to do those things, and that's exactly what it wants to do and is designed for, and I fucking hate that I'm the
And
target for that
so
one.
we've joked about it, but when it comes to pay to win, we talked about literally having an achievement that is just a shiny whale, and it starts out wood, and the more you donate to AI or your home park if you want, right, or wherever, then it upgrades and it becomes a you get a bronze whale, and then a silver whale, and then a gold whale, and then a platinum whale, and we're
And then a
literally
white
calling
belt,
it
right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, and a white belt, whale knight.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty valuable. I'm not gonna
But
lie.
like, there are a lot of people who do a lot of philanthropy in Amtgard, and
Tons. Of
like
it.
as much as we laugh at it being like pay to win, this wouldn't be pay to win. This is pay for a little digital whale in your like
Oh, we're getting
Pokemon
NFTs
badge app.
to Amtgard now.
Right?
NFTs, great.
Right?
I have one.
Go for it, Flo.
V9 is built in such a way that it can also be used as a tabletop role-playing game.
Ooh.
Oh,
Wow.
Ooh.
Okay. Could we do that? I mean, I
Did the
think
hate meter
you
explode
could
though?
already do that.
No,
and
I
I
think you
say that
dropped
because
the hate
someone has done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just you just convert feet to tiles, and assume X amount of like one repetition is this many rounds of casting or whatever if you want. I've played it. Sphere of Annihilation is broken, by the way. What do you do on your turn? I move to my sphere and I charge it. What do you do next turn? Just auto kill, whatever, as long as I hit. But so could it be done? I think it's already doable. Would we do it? I think that's kind of beyond the scope of V9 right now. Very cool thought, though.
Man, now I feel like mine is boring after Flo's cool one.
I should have gone last.
Yeah. Each class having archetype choices similar to the magic classes.
Like a skill tree or something.
100% possible. 100% possible. 100% like might happen. Again, disclaimer. Okay, sorry. Let me rephrase that. Almost guaranteed to happen in some form, although not archetypes.
Sure.
Melee will be getting some form of customization. No disclaimer. I'm willing to say that that's happening.
I mean,
I don't care.
right?
Mine was boring. Knowing that it's going to have customization inside
Are we
melee
talking-
martial classes is so nice.
Are we talking like skill trees or just like point by?
So the exact specifics is what we're working on.
Okay.
Because while the power gamers want full point buy, there is a subset of people, like last time I was here, we talked about the inspired versus uninspired and whatever.
Right,
There are folks who just want to be like, what am I playing? Give me the sheet. Cool. Go.
Yep.
Don't want to think about choices. In fact, they like the lack of choices. And so the presentation is going to be important. If we do have options, let's say, the easy option here is monk, right? Monk is often the go-to class for if you're trying to get a stick jock to play. You just say, hey, come play monk. You don't have to learn half the rules. You don't have to wear armor. Just use your sword to kill people.
Just ignore the magic. You're fine.
Yeah. So having pre-made builds, kind of like you see in a Dungeons and Dragons book, just use this in the rule book. So if you want to customize, you can. But if you just want to take a grab and go, there's a couple options. And especially if we try to update those with some actual, meta options, not like, here's my first monk and it's terrible, right?
Right.
Yeah. I hate to be this guy. I have one more, and it's actually a question I meant to ask earlier, but I think I can shoehorn it in here.
All right.
Sure.
Okay, how to phrase this? Substantial changes to the leveling system, i.e., reducing how long it takes to get to 6, or adding more levels, like a World of Warcraft expansion.
So, okay. Is it possible? Very much so. Is it possible? Like, is it possible that we might do it? Very much so. I think our data has overwhelmingly come back saying that people think it takes way too long to level.
Okay.
How about no more levels?
Okay, let's put on the asterisk now.
Yep.
Asterisk, anything I say is subject to change. We internally, we are currently very vibing with the idea of taking leveling in Amtgard from the journey and making it the tutorial.
I love you.
So
Yeah.
that it's not about, oh, how long have you played? You're on this big grinding. It takes you a year. And maybe if you went to events to get one class to 6th level. way old state of Amtgard thing was like, people basically decide if they're stuck in the game by like 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
So in our mind, we want people maxed out on classes by 2 or 3 years.
They need to have had an opportunity to try everything at a high
Right.
level.
Yeah.
And especially if we have these systems where, oh man, you need this class to counter this, or any sort of counterplay mechanism, having everyone be at 6 and just letting them play the classes, right? It encouraged them to find what they want, right? There are so many people who are forced into a class at the start, but because, oh, this is simple, oh, this is whatever, and their whole identity becomes that class because they spend so much time leveling it. People force stereotypes onto people because, okay, barbarian's a really good one, right? If you are maining a barbarian, if you start out as a barbarian, oh my God, you get the barbarian tropes laid upon you, whether you want it or not.
I mean,
But
Geralder gets this a lot. Like he gets known as being the warrior, and if he doesn't show up in armor, like, where's Geralder? Ha ha. You're not really Geralder if you're not out here in this big tin can thing,
So the hard part about changing the leveling system is that people like pursuing mastery. And other than Paragon, there's not really other ways to show off mastery other than your level, or maybe your amount of credits you have in something, right? And so we want to explore, if we're going to make leveling like fast, we want to explore how can people express that mastery still, so that you can be like, yeah, okay, you're a level 6 warrior guy who's been out here for 3 months, but here is how I can show that I am a more advanced warrior, because being level 6 isn't a skill.
Give him a badge.
So hang on, I got another one, kind of like Lucas, because it spawned off it. It's one that I've harped on before. So in V9, having it not be Paragon, be another word, so that you can see who's good at what version.
So you're basically me. I think that's what you are. So a lot of your thoughts are very much in line with my thoughts.
I like that. I'm
unfortunately, the hard part is we're in this. The award system of the game is this meta system, and everyone has grown accustomed to the length of time it takes to get something. And people are really adverse to losing that badge of the mastery, even though you can make a perfectly solid argument being like, no, you're a master of V8 Scout, not V9 Scout, which is completely different. I am a master bard from V7. I could bard like nobody's business. I have played one game of V8 Bard, went, this is not the same, and then immediately switched to Wizard, which is basically V7 Bard, sort of,
in a way,
balls. Right? Like, I could play, if I play Battle Mage, I could play my V7 style of Bard
right
a lot better than Bard can. And I personally think, yes, it would be really cool to have, what's the V9 mastery title? Oh, it's Exemplar. Let's try to get our Exemplars. But it's a hard sell. It's a hard sell to people, and there's like,
this one's kind of an echo chamber for me, because I think a lot of the people when I pitch this one are, because they're my friends, they're a little more like-minded, and they're like, yeah, that's a cool idea. I'm like, yeah, it's totally, maybe it's not, but I don't know. Like, I have that objective look of like, maybe it is a hard sell, but like I have the feedback of it's not a hard sell.
So I have one.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. We're gonna keep you here forever.
No, this is good, and I hope everyone that's listening kind of understands that we have the potential to change so many things with this game.
Yeah,
and we are trying to do our best to, explode the game and put it back together in a way that is good for everyone. The only things that we can't touch that are off limits to us is code of conduct, award standards, and some AI and policy stuff, right? We could technically even add a new like officer role description if we wanted to.
I was going to say, even in our questions, I feel like we're still kind of playing in the shallow end, but like I didn't even have to think. I didn't think about these kind of questions, so I wasn't like in the deep dive and see if I can get to the
Yeah.
deep area of the pool.
Also, just a heads up, Vidalia's question is going to be our last because I think we have like 5 minutes left before
Okay, yeah.
the
Okay.
recording goes.
Official monster manual. We didn't talk about monsters at all. And it was a whole section.
Hey,
You
we can
just
start now.
dumped,
This
like,
could
a
be the
huge
teaser.
one.
This is the
Gorovan mentioned the
cliffhanger for the
door,
next
but yeah.
visit.
Right.
All right. So I can tell you things about this. So is it possible for an official monster manual? Yes, it's within our power. Is it likely it's going to happen? Probably also yes. So story about V7 monster. I think I told this last time as well, but basically the V7 monster book or the V8 monster book was written basically as a V7 book.
Yeah.
And then at the last second, those writers were told, yeah, V8 is nothing like V7. And they were like, oh, and they had to fix it. That's why there's been such a, what's it called?
Disconnect.
Disconnect between the two in V8. For V9, we 100% off the bat said, hey, monsters, this is an official thing now. We are taking the reins of it. You know, we've asked anyone who's worked on Amtgard X stuff, hey, apply to our focus groups, talk to us with stuff. But if you are working on Amtgard X and you've been waiting for us to call you and say, yeah, start working on it, I'm sorry. Join us, come to us, but we are not giving the reins to you. A monster book on its own will be dependent on how monster is handled, because that is something that's up in the air. We are planning currently right now, there's a lot of a positive momentum towards a third book that currently called the GOG, or Game Organizer Guide, which is essentially a book. It's the DMG for Amtgard,
Right,
basically. It's players don't need to read it, but this is stuff that gives you tips on how to write a game, how to handle situations, things that are very organizer and focused, and guidance and support. This is the whole G.I. Joe thing, right? It's like,
Yep.
Our games run on the backs of Reeves and our game runners, and if we don't support them, we got nothing.
I've got bad news for you about getting the domain name for GOG.com.
No, don't. Do not go look that up.
No,
listeners.
GOG.com is fine.
No, GOG.com is good. Go to GOG.com. Get some
GOG.com
games.
size. Steam, but not.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that domain.
Not going to get it, unfortunately.
All right.
Teflon, what is
little-
written here? What
Little.
rune?
No. Don't try to. That.
If I
that's,
say that, it
that's
summons
moon
a
runes.
monster.
Yeah, that's moon runes right there. Hey, Wunjo, thank you so much for coming on. We want to thank Gorovan, whose name I did not forget, for coming on as well. It's so good to talk to the V9 crew again. We will very likely have you back on for another follow-up as well, but we are so short on time now. Please go ahead and hit that rollout before we run out of time.
All right, Wunjo, thank you so much, sincerely.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube or Spotify to get notified about new episodes. And make sure to follow us on Facebook for announcements and more.